Today's episode of Walt Disney World Today is being sponsored by the Orlando Vista Hotel. Come on, it's got a huge pineapple in front. How much better does it get?
Your next vacation time is so far away. You're counting down the seconds every single day. What are you to do? Well, there's one venue I recommend you turn to, where your magic withdrawal will finally be cured. Spend 3 days a week with Super Walt Disney World nerds. You can depend on Matt, Mike, and WDW today.
It's Friday, March 28th, 2008, and this is episode 389 of Walt Disney World Today. I'm Matt Hochberg from StudioCentral.com. On the show today, we have Mike Scopa of AllEars.net. Welcome, Mike.
In Libraries of Wisdom, they debated ideas and shared new discoveries with all who would listen.
Ooh, Spaceship Earth.
Spaceship Earth, correct.
And also on the show today, we have Annette Owens of MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. Welcome, Annette.
Oh, thanks for having me back, guys.
Anytime. And we have a special guest today. It's Thomas Tryon, who's the producer for special events and projects at Walt Disney World. Welcome, Tryon. Thomas.
I am glad to be here. Thank you.
Alliteration always gets me. Now, we brought Thomas on, among other reasons, because you're actually the producer for the Block Party Bash Parade at Disney's Hollywood Studios. And we thought it would be interesting to tell kind of the story of Block Party Bash coming to the studios, because it's not as easy as people think. You don't just pick something up and throw it and it fits, right?
No, it actually, there were a lot of challenges that were interesting on the project. You know, this parade premiered in California, originally at Disney's California Adventure as a part of the happiest celebration on Earth. So it opened 05/05/05 on that very auspicious day and was incredibly successful in California. And so there was a lot of pressure on the production team to make sure we were going to take ownership of that show and maintain it and do all the things that had made it such a great hit in California. And so we started very soon after the show had opened to have discussions about how could we take that great product and move it to the studios here. And one of the first things we started working on was the logistics. It was not designed to move. It was purpose-built for California. And so we had a lot of investigation to do about how we were going to literally get it across country. So we started with that process. How many semis does it take? It ends up taking about 15 semis to move a parade of this size across the country.
Oh, that's good to know in case I ever have to move one.
Yeah, you could move several houses and the parade if you wanted to. For that. And one of the other things that meant is because it was purpose-built for California, we had to look at the studio and determine what might need to be changed at Disney's Hollywood Studios in order to accommodate this parade. And there were some changes we had to make at the facility of the studios as well. As I said, it's a very large parade, so we did brand new concrete work throughout the studio. We had to expand the parade building itself, and we also had to build a new costuming facility to take on the larger operation. These costumes, monsters, and some of the things that are in this parade are monsters in and of themselves in terms of their size. So
right.
We had to make some changes both at the studio and then, figure out logistically, as I said, how we were going to get all those things across the country here.
Now, are these changes, are they as easy as you make it sound, or did you say we need to do this and this and this, like some of these changes you just mentioned, and then someone goes to you and says, Thomas, it ain't happening, buddy. It's not. I mean, how difficult was it to adapt the parade? Because I know that a lot of people, when it was first announced that Block Party Bash, or even rumored that Block Party Bash was going to be coming to the studios, they said it's not going to fit. It's not, in Disney's California Adventures, for our listeners who aren't aware, the pathway was specifically designed for the parade. I mean, it's much wider than, say, Hollywood Boulevard is.
Yes, it's very true. I mean, we actually did had to prove to a lot of people that it could be done. And to get the floats to fit, how would they fit on the street? How would they be laid out for the show stop, which is so critical to the success of the party itself? And it wasn't as easy maybe as I make it sound, in that we had hoped to start this process about a year earlier. And because of the facility modifications that had to be made, the original schedule to move the parade was delayed by a full year in order to make all the facility changes. We had to have that extra time to redo buildings, build buildings. In fact, our costuming building is just coming online this week because the schedule was still accelerated for doing brand new construction. You usually hope to have 18 months from when you start a project to when it opens, and we had substantially less than that, really just barely 12 months from the time that they said, yes, the project is a go, start working on it until it was time for us to open. So we had to work twice as fast, really, to make those changes, and there were some convincing arguments that had to be made that we could make it work. There were some struggles to overcome there.
That's interesting. When you backing up for a second here, we're talking about Block Party Bash being the choice to be brought over here. Now, Thomas, was Block Party Bash always the choice for it? Was this a plan B, or was there a plan B in case this didn't work? Because clearly this isn't a cookie cutter situation where you can just take it and throw it in there. Tell us a little bit about the decision process, because obviously it sounds like you were a big fan of the parade in California, but how much of a decision was it in terms of it being approved to be over here, in terms of other options like developing a new parade or perhaps taking a different parade and bringing it in?
Actually, it's a part of a new strategy that we've been looking at for Disney parks in general to allow us, when we have such a great product, to say, well, let's extend the life of that particular show or product by moving it to another location and getting more use out of it. And so this was a part of an overall strategy, really focusing on parades to say, how can we transfer those assets and use them in multiple places? Since we know they're successful creatively, we know they're successful with the guests, let's get as much out of that as we can so that more guests get to experience it than those that might just see it in one park in California. So that was also a part of the process of decision making, was what kind of strategy do we use to move parades? What are the parks that get connected together? And how is that designed to function? In this case, Disney's California Adventure was most comparable to the studio here in Florida, and then in the same way, Walt Disney Studios in Paris is also comparable. So those three parks are working together now. We moved the Disney Stars and Motorcars parade to Paris, and it will be a new parade for them next season. So after we worked through the strategy of, okay, you can move it from park to park, then we realized, okay, you've got to make those parks similar in terms of infrastructure, and that was where we brought to light those other elements of what had to be changed at the studio. But all in all, I'm a fan both of the parade and being very excited about bringing it here, but also of the idea that we can use these assets in multiple places. But we went back and forth. I started working on Pixar Play, which ultimately ended up working better for California. When we started the discussion, the new parade was going to open here and then move, but because of the changes that were proposed for Disney's California Adventure, they decided it was the right time to put a new parade there and in turn move Block Party here. So we went through a couple different versions of how that could ultimately happen. And now Pixar Play, the intent is that it would be able to move to Paris after it's finished its run in California.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. Scoba?
Thomas, I have an interesting question. When I was listening to you talk about how there had to be some adjustments made in the studios to accommodate the parade, and I guess I was wondering, when a decision is made to move a parade such as this from one Disney theme park to the other one, are there thoughts of, well, should we change the parade or should we change the venue? And I was just curious as to what kind of decision blocks do you go through? Is it cost? Is it being able to speed up the process? What determined whether you were going to alter the parade or alter the venue? And I'm guessing that it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
Yeah, I think the idea, it's a very interesting point because you could balance the expense of making physical changes versus the the creative of changing the original intent. And
Right.
as a storytelling organization, as a creative group in California, we work with Disney Creative Entertainment as a part of WDI, and the idea was maintain the original creative intent. And as long as we do that, I am charged with being the steward of that creative. And really, my directive is change as little as possible. So you go back in and you say, well, in order to do that, then here are the expenses that we would have to incur and the physical changes that would have to be made at the studio. That is weighed against what would have to happen. What would you change creatively? What might have to be altered in the show? And that decision is made by the entire Disney Park segment. And the directive really has always been try to keep the creative as it is, because that's the asset that we're leveraging. Taking that same creative and using it more than once means you're not reinventing the wheel every time of like, oh, okay, well, now we're doing it over again and we need to change the music. It's like, well, then you're not really saving yourself the effort that you put into that initial creative design. So the primary function is always to try to maintain it as it is, and we did an excellent job of that from California. It really looks, feels, and sounds like the exact same show that they did in California.
I was going to ask you, do you recall, and this goes way back, was there any discussion way back when to bring Light Magic to the East Coast, or was that just one of those parades that was decided to just be retired?
I wasn't really a part of the strategy at that point, but I don't recall any discussion. It was really the only ones that they'd done that before was with the various versions of the electrical parade. It was one of the first things that they tried, but there was no official strategy behind it at that point, and I feel that it hadn't really taken hold of, let's plan to do this. So it may have come up in discussion and just sort of went by the wayside. This move from California to Florida is the first step in what we hope is an ongoing project to continue to use different assets across multiple parks.
Now, Thomas, when people ask me to tell them about Block Party Bash, I often say, I call it's not your father's parade. It's not the passive experience where you stand in one place and the parade floats, they go by you very slowly and, the characters are there and you wave at them. This is not that. This is a high energy, emphasis on high energy attraction. It's almost a show, really, that moves. Is that a fair assessment by you? Do you see it like that? Or, tell us your opinions on the show, because obviously you are a fan of it. It's one of the reasons why you brought it over here. But tell us, what makes this show so great, in your opinion?
I think you hit on the key point that it really is a show. When we think about Block Party Bash, we think about it as a show experience. It happens to perform on the parade route, but it's not like any other parade that we've done. It really is the most interactive parade that we've done because it draws people in just by its energy, but literally we use people as a part of the show. So it just happens that it's a parade, but it's so much more than that. We parade down the street, everybody gets the kind of wave to the characters, it all goes by you, you get to see the immensity of the floats. But then when it stops and we do the show, we can do so much more. We're able to do things that a traveling unit can't. We're able to add effects. People can go and things unfold from the floats, and we bring out the scream meters, and we're able to collect the screams from the guests. Those are things that a moving unit couldn't do. So we reveal more things through the show stops. We reveal the trampolines, and we get to have acrobats doing things that would be impossible if the parade had to move. And then we build and build and build. As you talked about, the level of excitement, I think it's the show that has everything but the kitchen sink in it. There are all these kind of different props that the kids get to use. There are balls that we throw back and forth to the guests. There are tambourines that the dancers use. We have Nerf balls that go out at the end. We reveal the Incredibles. They come up on these lifts, that we get to do, and that's all because it's a show. It's literally a 12-minute show that we do twice on the streets of the studio. And it makes it so much more for the guests when they get to come out and dance with us, when they get to come out and learn to do, they learn their favorite disco moves and everything. They really are experiencing something that's different than the more passive traditional parade of you just kind of watch it go by, and
Yeah.
and that makes the cast so much more energized. Our performers are just the key to the show. When you see their faces and you see how excited they are and watch them working with the guests and playing with the guests, that's what makes the show so successful, is the energy of the cast. They're right there in front of you for the whole show, and it really is a great energy.
Yeah, that's what I just love about it. I mean, I was a person who just wrote off daytime parades. You know, I was someone who said, you've seen one, you've seen them all. And I saw Block Party Bash, and it's a parade that I want to see every time I go there because of just the energy. It's just amazing. It's so it's like fun by osmosis, because the cast members that are a part of this, the performers, are so talented, and they just exude such high amounts of energy to you, the guest, because you become part of it. It doesn't matter if you're 8 years old or if you're, you know, much older than that. You want it. You have no choice, but you know, you start your hips start moving as the music goes on. You know, you start remembering the moves of the Macarena. I mean, that's, you know, that's what makes it so fun about it. One of the things I was always curious about, you mentioned a lot of the elements of the show, and one is the trampoline part, which I think is really one of the more exciting elements of the show, the performers that do that. Can you tell us how many people broke legs trying to get that all those moves down?
The trampoline is very unique. I mean, what was created for the show does not exist in the trampoline world. I mean, we all get to see what people do at the Olympic level. I mean, it is a gymnastic skill. So that's not someone that you can just say, okay, go start jumping on the trampoline and you'll be fine. We brought the coach who originally did the show in California and had worked to maintain the show, and she was a professional Olympic trampoline and gymnast herself.
Oh, wow.
And helped with the design of that. That idea of, for those that haven't seen, that, you know, there are 4 trampolines actually that are connected together with a landing platform in the middle, and they're more of a mini tramp size. It's not a big bed trampoline or like the kind that you might have in your backyard. They're 4 fairly small trampolines, but because of the way that they're arranged, the performers can bounce across the landing pad in the middle. They can bounce from one trampoline to another. They can do a lot of very unique aerial things as an acrobat that you wouldn't normally do on a regular trampoline, just bouncing up and down. But from an injury standpoint, you know, these are professionals that this is what they do. They also are our jump stilt performers, so they're very, very athletic. They're in great shape, and you know, they have their own ways of working through that. You know, they tape their wrists and everything to make sure that when they sweat, they're not slippery and things like that. And they do have special equipment as an acrobat that they use that helps strengthen their ankles and things like that. But it's been from California, the rates of injury and stuff were very low because we do a very extensive conditioning program. Those athletes come in and they spend 45 minutes in their warm-up just sort of conditioning themselves for the day. Then they do the show, and then they do a cool down that they sort of warm down and let the muscles react again and relax a bit. So it's a very involved process for them, but because we go through all those steps of conditioning and show and cool down, we've really reduced the injury rate by making sure we go through all those steps.
Boy, Thomas, I'm always fascinated by Disney parades, and one of the questions that just popped up in my head was that when you moved the parade from the West Coast to the East Coast, did along with the parade floats and everything else, did also most of the performers come with the parade, or were the performers from the East Coast?
The great majority of the performers are all from here in Florida,
Wow.
just because it was, you know, we have our own. There are a lot of differences between the casting in California and the casting in Florida. There were a few people that had done the show out there that were so passionate about it, they chose to relocate to Florida so they could keep doing the show. But that's a small handful of people. Almost everyone was a part of our Florida cast.
Thomas, one of the things that came about when news of Block Party Bash coming across to the studios was a lot of people, for lack of a better word, complained because there weren't the Fab Four characters in there. You didn't have, you know, Mickey or Minnie or Donald, Goofy. These characters weren't in the parade, and this bothers some people that these kind of characters aren't in the parade. And to me, I see it as you've got 2 other parades which very greatly feature these characters, And it's a nice change of pace. It's good to have, some little different here now and then. Can you speak to about that? Was that a part of the decision process, or was that greatly decided upon when Block Party Bash was brought to Disney's California Adventure the first time?
I regret to say I don't think for Florida we really considered how our guests would think about not having Mickey in the studio's parade. In California, it's less of a consideration because we see the guests literally walk back and forth across downtown Disney to get from one park to another. So they understand where you might experience Block Party, which is all Pixar characters. You can walk right across the street and see Parade of Dreams, which is all of the classic Disney characters. So we went forward thinking, this is a great fit for the studio because it is Pixar. It fits into the whole idea of what goes on at the studio and where would these characters normally live. It makes sense for them to live at the studio, especially with the new things that are happening at the studio in the future. We already had Monsters meet and greet there. We already had a Woody and Buzz meet and greet there. So there were a lot of reasons that it seemed to fit within the studio. Mm-hmm. I have had guests talk to me after the parade saying, where was Mickey? They just expect that the last float is going to come out with Mickey. And to me, I'm very comfortable saying, he's at the Magic Kingdom, parade there, and that's where that's where he lives. That's the whole idea is he is present at the Magic Kingdom, and you can go see him in the parade there. So I hope that in the long run, the guests sort of understand that, this gives them a unique offering. Where can you get, over 20 Pixar characters all in one place? It really focuses on something that is unique to the studio as opposed to, well, I can see Mickey in the Jingle Jungle parade, or I can go see him in the Magic Kingdom parade. This is something that is very unique to the studio, and hopefully people will come. I mean, so far, because they can come and they can dance and they can enjoy the energy of the show, I think that balances out when they say, oh, I didn't get to see Mickey. It's like, well, but I just saw him yesterday when I was in the Kingdom.
I totally agree with you. One last question for you. I'm not sure you're involved in the decision process for this, but with Block Party Bash and California Adventure, there were indications both in the park and on the map about where to stand, where the show stops are, and those have not been implemented yet in the studios to my knowledge. Is that forthcoming?
It is work in progress. Of course, when we opened the parade, it was the day before Easter sort of peak started to happen, and we wanted to take some time to really see how the guests react. We know that what California guests do, they don't bother to line up before the show. It's basically they know the show's going to happen at 5:15, and at 5:15 that's when they line up on the parade route. Mm-hmm. Our guests have been programmed to sort of know they have to camp out and find their spot and everything. So we're watching to see what the guests are doing and using that as a determination. I think in the long run there may be some more indications of what the party zones are like they had in California, but we wanted to judge it both in high attendance and then when we're sort of back into our everyday attendance to see how the guests take in the show before we determine, we've absolutely got to label those party zones. It may start by doing it just on the guide map, and then we may eventually add signage like they had in California. We're really evaluating that with the park's operation to determine the best way to get the guests where they want to be to watch the show.
Excellent. Well, Thomas, thank you so much for joining us and telling us all about the parade.
Oh, it was my pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. And that's it for us today.
Just a quick reminder that this Sunday, March 30th, at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time is our next live show. It's a great opportunity for you to call in with your questions about an upcoming trip or sharing an opinion or some tips or whatever. Good opportunity just to talk to us. Just go to wdwtoday.com for all the details about our next live show. Again, it's this Sunday, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, wdwtoday.com for all the details.
If you want to find our older episodes, read our show notes, or send us your comments, visit the Walt Disney World Today website at wdwtoday.com. For Len Testa, Mike Scopa, Mike Newell, Annette Owens, and Thomas Tryon, I'm Matt Hochberg. We'll see you on the next show.